Morning. Just read Jeremiah chapter 25. I think I'm on day 14 now of this video journal. It's a long chapter, but it must be a turning point because God's judgment gets poured out in this chapter. He begins by saying, I've been preaching to you guys for 20 years and you haven't heard my words. He's been preaching to Judah for 20 years and they haven't listened. And he says, okay, here comes the judgment. Here comes Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar comes and takes people into captivity and destroys Jerusalem. And what's interesting is God calls Nebuchadnezzar his servant. The guy's not saved, not believed God. He's obviously a terrible sinner, but God still uses him to accomplish his goals. So that's something to keep in mind. Everyone out there, even, what I'm taking into context for myself is right now the governors said we have to wear a mask and everyone hates it. There's tons of governors in the U.S. right now that are just being ridiculous. Even our president sometimes is just absolutely ridiculous. And they're all still servants to God. He still uses them however he wants. I can have faith that God is going to do what he wants to do with them. And he's pulling the strings. I can just obey whatever they've got going on unless they tell me that I can't go to church. It's the only time I need to worry about it, So yeah, God's using Nebuchadnezzar and he's a servant. And then the rest of the chapter talks about this cup of fury, the wine cup of fury. He tells Jeremiah to take it to these other nations and pass it around, and everyone who drinks, that's who I'm going to be angry with. They're going to experience this fury, and it's like Egypt to Assyria, just all the nations around there. And he says the destruction is going to be so bad you won't even be able to bury the bodies. You can't have weddings and harvests and stuff like that. And it's a pretty tough image to swallow there. But, to this day, that area is still just a hotbed of death and destruction, The Middle East, from Egypt to Turkey, the fury is still going on, I think. It's tough to live there, Tough for anybody. But what he's talking about is just a complete destruction of everything, that all the idolatrous countries. And then he finishes verse 37, 38 says, and the peaceable inhabitants are cut down because of the fierce anger of the Lord. He hath forsaken his covert as the lions, for their land is desolate because of the fierceness of the oppressor and because of his fierce anger. So because of the oppression that the people in charge are performing, God cuts them down. So we can depend on him to be just and righteous when it comes to those that are in charge. I mean, in the beginning of the chapter, he said, even though I'm using Nebuchadnezzar, I'm still going to judge him, and he's still going to be cut down. So all these nations they're the people that are in charge and are responsible. They get cut down. I can have faith that God is taking care of it. I can sit back and let him do his thing and just try and get closer to him in my life.